Recovery is the key to juggling jiu-jitsu training, lifting weights, doing cardio, doing mobility work, and still having the energy to live your life. If you're constantly sore, have sore elbows, sore shoulders, sore neck, your muscles are tired and fatigued, your body aches all the time, and it's as a result of trying to maintain jiu-jitsu, strength and conditioning, and everything else, or just train jiu-jitsu in general, then this is for you. You need to focus on recovery. In this episode, we'll be going over the science behind recovery and damage, the 3 primary pillars of recovery, and a summary at the end to tie everything together. The science behind recovery and damage. What is recovery? When we're talking about recovery, we're talking about your body returning to homeostasis after training jiu-jitsu, lifting weights, doing cardio, or whatever else. Your body is constantly seeking homeostasis. Homeostasis is the self-regulating process by which biological systems tend to maintain stability while adjusting to conditions that are optimal for survival. Therefore, recovery can be thought of as our body's tool to regain homeostasis and get back to a baseline. But importantly, your body will try to recover to a state where the same stimulus doesn't cause the same level of damage. Or in other words, build back better, stronger, faster, fitter, more powerful. You fill in the rest. So what do we see in the body as a result of training jiu-jitsu? Oxidative stress, autophagy, large increases in inflammation, micro tears in the muscle fiber, just to name a few. So when you're unable to recover from the stress between your sessions, you won't be improving, no matter what workout you go through, or no matter how often you're training jiu-jitsu. And in some extreme cases, you may be making things worse. You may actually be regressing in your progress. This is where the concept of overreaching comes into play. So what is overreaching? When you train jiu-jitsu or lift weights, you're placing a training stimulus on your body. This stimulus forces your body to adapt in response to the training. This adaptation is done through neurological, structural, and hormonal changes caused by the stress of the training. In response to this stress, your body attempts to build back stronger, fitter, faster, and better. This is the act of recovery. The body does this to prevent the same stimulus from creating the same level of damage. The more fit you become, the more training stimulus is required to achieve that super compensation. Super compensation is a term we use to refer to the fact that your body is building back stronger, to super compensate. Not just compensate for the training and repair, but to super compensate, meaning the training stimulus won't cause the same level of damage. When you train to a level that forces your body to adapt, this is known as functional overreaching. Thus, you have trained to a sufficient stimulus to cause positive adaptations, and it's known as functional because you can adequately recover and super compensate to the level of the stimulus. We can compare this to non-functional overreaching, which is basically the inverse, meaning yes, we've trained to a sufficient level to create damage and cause a sufficient stimulus on the body, but we've gone too far, meaning your body is unable to recover sufficiently to improve your performance. Thus, it is non-functional overreaching. You've gone too far and your body is struggling to keep up. Overtraining is not just a buzzword, but an actual phenomenon that occurs, albeit it is a lot more rare than you probably think. It's basically a scenario that occurs when you've gone too deep into the well of non-functional overreaching too consistently for too long, and thus it takes weeks, sometimes months to recover from that stimulus, meaning you're in a state of overtraining. Some common symptoms of non-functional overreaching are excessive muscle soreness, reduction in your mood, low motivation, poor sleep, high heart rate, and chronically low heart rate variability score. More on this later. Muscle soreness. The most common symptom of training stimulus comes from delayed onset muscle soreness, or DOMS. DOMS is a soreness that you feel in your muscles 24 to 72 hours post-exercise. DOMS is caused by your immune response and a neural feedback loop caused by the exercise rather than a response to the actual muscle damage itself. And no, it's not caused by lactate in the muscle or lactate buildup. I want to just mention that DOMS is not required to achieve a state of functional overreaching. Sometimes you'll find that you don't get DOMS from your workout. That's totally fine. You don't have to have DOMS in order to achieve compensation or super compensation to your workouts. It is not an indication that you've worked out hard enough or that you've earned it or anything like that. It is simply a phenomenon that is closely associated and a symptom caused by overreaching in a functional and non-functional state. But how can you reduce that muscle soreness and thus help to improve your recovery? The number one practical method that I recommend to reduce your muscle soreness is active recovery. This is not just a buzz term. This is implementing low level of movement to stimulate the fluid removal from your muscles, to stimulate blood flow to your muscles and get things moving and flowing. You can think of active recovery or that low level of movement as a way that your muscles can pump out the bad fluid and bring in the good nutrients. Or in other words, take out the garbage and bring in the groceries. I mentioned previously that an inflammation response occurs due to the stimulus that you place on it when you train jiu-jitsu. So you should take anti-inflammatories to reduce this, right? No, absolutely not. Anti-inflammatories do just that. They reduce the inflammatory response in your body to training stimulus. This may, on the surface, seem like a positive because if we can reduce the inflammation, we reduce the soreness and improve our recovery. But it is this inflammatory response that assists in recovery. This is your body's natural response to a training stimulus, natural response to damage. Thus, this is the healing response. It's the same reason why they no longer recommend icing an injury straight away, because it blunts that inflammatory response and blunts your body's natural healing process. The same can be said about taking anti-inflammatories to try and improve our recovery for jiu-jitsu. Which brings me to ice baths and cold immersion. This is a very popular recovery tactic. However, if you implement it immediately after training, it will blunt the inflammatory response and blunt the positive effects or our recovery from the training stimulus. That's for jiu-jitsu, for hypertrophy training, for strength training, and everything in between. However, there has been research to show that cold immersion and ice baths will reduce muscle soreness. So if you're in a state of non-functional overreaching or fear that you might be from a workout, then going into an ice bath can help to reduce that muscle soreness, but it's essentially going to be robbing Peter to pay Paul. You're not going to get any positive benefit from your workout, or your positive benefit, I should say, will be reduced because you'll be reducing your natural inflammatory response. I mentioned this in the previous episode when I spoke about hypertrophy for jiu-jitsu and stated clearly that you should avoid ice baths or cold immersion immediately post-training to avoid the negative interference effect that it may cause. The three primary pillars of recovery: 1, training protocols; 2, sleep; and 3, nutrition. Training protocols. One of the best ways to improve your recovery is to ensure that you are periodizing your training effectively to not only allow time for recovery, but to periodize it in terms of increasing the difficulty to allow for super compensation. Or in other words, by gradually increasing the training intensity and the frequency, we allow our body time to adapt. So we are in a constant state of overreaching, but it's functional overreaching. And we allow for enough time to adapt to the training stimulus. And jiu-jitsu is no exception to this. An effective training cycle or mesocycle should contain periodization, meaning progressively increasing in training intensity and volume to push you and cause super compensation, but allow for enough time for recovery. In a jiu-jitsu context, this would be the equivalent of training consistently for about once per week and all of a sudden ramping things up to 2 a day or 6+ times per week and going 100% in your training. No wonder your body will be crumbling. You're unable to recover adequately to the training stimulus that you're placing on it. You've gone too hard, too quickly. But how do you know if your training stimulus is sufficient? How do you know if you're in a state of overreaching? Well, here's 3 practical ways of determining whether you are in a state of overreaching, and if you are, is it functional or non-functional? You can use biological markers to track if you're overreaching or you're overtraining by assessing your heart rate. Your resting heart rate should not be elevated, particularly during sleep, compared against your baseline. You can also determine this by reviewing your HRV. It should not be a low score. You want it high score compared to your average. You can also look at your performance metrics like your vertical jump height or your speed or your strength to determine if you're overreaching. And finally, you can keep an eye out for symptoms of non-functioning overreaching like soreness, reduction in mood, low motivation, and poor sleep quality. Warm-ups. Believe it or not, but ineffective or having no warm-up at all can reduce your body's ability to recover from your exercise. It can cause excessive fatigue post-exercise and excessive muscle soreness. Crappy warm-ups are a plague that infects all of jiu-jitsu. So what I recommend is doing your own warm-up before you train on the mats. And don't skip out on your warm-up for lifting weights either. What should an effective jiu-jitsu warm-up look like? Well, first and foremost, a warm-up, as the name implies, should warm your body core temperature, should get you primed and ready to go to train jiu-jitsu. But I also recommend implementing mobility drills and dynamic stretches to get your joints primed, get the blood flowing through your joints, and get them lubricated and ready to go. If you need help in this area, I have a free jiu-jitsu warm-up and cool-down program that you can download. Link is in the description of this episode. Cool-downs. Now, cool-downs are probably skipped more often than warm-ups are. Cool-downs are an incredibly effective tool to trigger the recovery process immediately after your session. This is because a cool-down allows you to down-regulate, calm down your central nervous system, and get a breathing pattern going to slow your heart rate and start the recovery process immediately. I recommend combining a simple breathing protocol with some static stretching to get a 2-for-1 and kickstart your recovery immediately. This can be done in the form of a static cool-down stretching routine and box breathing. If you haven't heard of box breathing before, imagine your breathing pattern is represented by the 4 sides of a square. Each side is equal length and can be anywhere between 3 to 12 seconds, but it's most commonly employed as 4 seconds. Breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, and hold for 4. Then repeat this cycle. This is the 4 sides of the box, hence why it's called box breathing. This is not some BS woo-woo science. There is actual real data to suggest that this is an effective recovery method to reduce and lower your heart rate and calm down your central nervous system. Sleep. Sleep is one of the most crucial recovery tools in your arsenal. It is during sleep that our bodies do the majority of the repairing and rebuilding from physical stresses of training. Growth hormone, vital for tissue repair and recovery, is primarily released during your sleep. Inadequate sleep can lead to performance reduction, increased risk of injury, mood reduction, compromised immune system, and have a negative effect on your mental health. Aim for 7 to 9 hours of sleep each and every night. To improve your sleep hygiene, I recommend maintaining a consistent sleep schedule, creating a quiet, dark, and cool environment, avoiding your screens, particularly your phone, close to bedtime, and try to develop a sleep time routine to get your body primed and ready for sleep. Having a carbohydrate-rich meal in the evening or late afternoon has been shown to improve your sleep quality. And if you train in the evenings, this can be a good 2-for-1 to get your glycogen replenishment in after jiu-jitsu. But you need to be aware that eating a large, bulky meal just before bed is not recommended. So this is a catch-22 and something that I will be addressing in the nutrition episode coming soon. Sleep trackers. There are many different sleep tracking wearable devices on the market. These sleep trackers give you a recovery score, which further emphasizes the importance of sleep and the role that it plays in recovery. The metrics that we're predominantly concerned with when we're assessing your sleep quality via these wearables is your total time of sleep, the time it takes you to fall asleep, your resting heart rate, and your heart rate variability. With your resting heart rate during sleep, we're looking for this number to be quite low compared to your average. If you have an elevated resting heart rate during the night, it may be an indication that you're not recovering. We also look at heart rate variability. Heart rate variability, or HRV, is the time in between your beats. Your heart doesn't have a consistent time between your beats. It actually changes, and this is known as your heart rate variability, measured in milliseconds. You actually want this number to be high. However, we need to compare this to your average. We're not just looking at your heart rate variability compared to anyone else. We're looking at it compared to your average on the same wearable device. Now, there is a discussion to be had about the accuracy of these wearables, but what I say to that is we're more looking at the trends that they provide us. We're not necessarily looking for the most accurate heart rate variability score. We're looking for the trend of your heart rate variability from night to night, week to week, to determine if you are adequately recovering. And the same can be said about your heart rate as well. Supplements for sleep. Magnesium. Magnesium is believed to regulate the sleep-wake cycle and potentially improve sleep due to its actions as an NMDA antagonist and a GABA agonist. Some evidence suggests that magnesium deficiencies is associated with poor sleep quality, and magnesium deficiencies is one of the most common deficiency in the first world. However, there is limited evidence to show that magnesium supplementation improves your sleep quality. One meta-analysis found that magnesium may reduce the time it takes to fall asleep in older adults with insomnia, but it did not improve total sleep time or sleep quality. Lavender. Lavender is a genus of plant used for essential oil and aromatherapy. Lavender supplementation has been shown to temporarily alleviate anxiety. Though lavender does not have a sedative effect, it has been shown to improve sleep quality when used in the form of aromatherapy. And there is some evidence to show that lavender can improve your slow wave sleep patterns. Melatonin. The reason that I'm talking about melatonin is similar to magnesium. It is very commonly recommended as a sleeping aid or a sleeping supplement. However, I urge you to be careful when supplementing with melatonin. It should only be used in small doses and temporarily to improve things like jet lag symptoms or to help with changing of your sleeping schedule. Doses between 300 micrograms up to 5 milligrams are recommended. Start at the lower end and then increase as necessary. This supplement is not dose dependent, meaning the more melatonin you take won't necessarily assist in the benefits. I know that improving your sleep is easier said than done, particularly when you're trying to balance work, life, and all your other commitments. It seems like getting 7 to 9 hours is impractical for most people. But by prioritizing your sleep and making it an important part of your routine, a non-negotiable, if you will, it will improve your performance. It will improve your recovery. It will help your mood and so many other flow-on effects and positive effects on your life. Nutrition. Nutrition plays a vital role in recovery. After a training session, your muscles are depleted and there is micro tears in the muscle requiring repair. Consuming the right nutrients helps to replenish those energy stores and to kickstart that repair process immediately by making protein available for muscle protein synthesis, or NPS. The 3 primary macronutrients are protein, carbohydrates, and lipids, or fats. Protein is essential for muscle repair, carbohydrate is essential for glycogen replenishment, while fats are essential for hormone production and reducing inflammation. I'm going to do a dedicated deep dive episode into nutrition specifically for jiu-jitsu and recovery in a future episode. In the meantime, if you want to learn more about nutrition for recovery and nutrition for jiu-jitsu, then check out the resources available at bjjstrongonline.com. There is a dedicated nutrition section which teaches you how to optimize nutrition, including comprehensive guides, hydration protocols, downloadable resources, and more. I'll put a link to BJJ Strong Online in the description of this episode if you want to check it out. Summary. Understanding DOMS. Delayed onset muscle soreness, or DOMS, occurs 24 to 72 hours post-exercise. DOMS is a result of an immune response and a neural feedback loop, not from lactate buildup. The presence or absence of DOMS doesn't dictate the effectiveness of a workout. Reducing muscle soreness. Engage in active recovery by doing low-level movement post-exercise. Avoid anti-inflammatories and cold immersion as they can inhibit the body's natural recovery response. 3 primary tiers of recovery. Training protocols. Incorporate programming and periodization. A well-structured training cycle should involve progressive increases in intensity and volume and allow time for recovery. Use biological markers, performance metrics, and symptoms to identify non-functional overreaching. Ensure effective warm-ups with mobility drills and dynamic stretching, and utilize cooldowns with static stretching routines and box breathing to kickstart recovery immediately post your sessions. Sleep. Sleep is vital for repairing and rebuilding from training stresses. Aim for 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep per night. Improving your sleep hygiene can help enhance your sleep quality. Tracking your sleep using wearable devices can be a useful recovery tool. By focusing on your resting heart rate and heart rate variability, you can determine if you are fully recovered or if you may be entering into a state of non-functioning overreaching. Some supplements like magnesium and lavender might help to improve sleep, but in the case of magnesium, the evidence is fairly light and more research is needed. Use melatonin with caution and only for adjusting your sleep to an altered sleeping schedule. Nutrition is essential for refueling your energy reserves and repairing muscle damage post-exercise. Proteins aid in muscle repair, carbohydrates replenish glycogen stores, and fats help to reduce inflammation. A dedicated nutrition episode is coming soon, so keep your eyes peeled and make sure to like and subscribe for more. Thank you for watching. To support the BJJ Strong Podcast, subscribe or follow on your platform of choice. Stay tuned for the next one.